Fragments of Silicon, the owner of none of your favorite intellectual properties.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. Back after a unexpected hiatus.
Ah.
I suppose there's no point in dispensing with any further commentary. Petty, you take it away
Where the hell do I even start?
with your heater.
Water heater, yes. So
So,
Tuesday we were having a bit of an issue with the water heater running really hot. We figured, oh, one of the cats must have jumped on one of the things that controlled the heat. Once we get a second to go downstairs, we'll fix it. Uh, Wednesday afternoon, my sister does dishes. There's no hot water at all. So we're like, oh crap. But at least the hot water is not leaking. So we were thinking, oh, we can go run down to, we can go run up to Home Depot and get some heating elements, get the thermostat, $50, done and dusted. I'll have it handled before Dad gets home. No, the heating elements in the old water heater are corroded in there. So much so that even one of my stronger friends we had come over to try and help us, he was rounding the bolts to try and get them out. He had to go so hard on it. So this went from a cheap and easy fix to we need to buy a brand new water heater. Water heaters are not standard sizes. So the one I grabbed that was in our budget is about 6 inches too short from the stance it needed to be to easily connect to what we had before. So this then became a fun game of buying the stuff to plump the new water heater. And my dad was not paying attention, and he cut the cold water inlet before he cut the hot water out that had no water running through it. So we had to shut off the whole water to the house. Then, oh god, the PVC glue he had wasn't dried up. So we had to make another run out to get some PVC glue to try and at least glue the ball valve back on that fed the water heater to at least seal it up so we can have at least cold water in the house. So that was an adventure. Round two, Thursday, it took another 3 trips to various hardware stores. I was able to find some metal, basically their supply lines, to connect to both sides of the heater that extended, so we don't have to worry about the height problem anymore. And they both have shut off, so if heaven forbid anything happens to the water heater again, we just pull the valves and isolate it, yank the damn thing out. And then, after we get the water all set back up again, I was upstairs in mine and my sister's shared bathroom. I hear the water running. Our old toilet that hasn't worked in 15 years, the shut-off valve broke. and it was leaking water into the floor. So then it became the fun joy of we needed to replace that water, that supply line, and since the toilet was already broken, there was no point in putting a broken toilet back in there, so we figured, let's just replace the toilet too. So that was another exercise in absolute frustration. Several more different trips to the hardware stores. The toilet is finally in. It's plugged in. It works. My sister and I now no longer have to go all the way to the downstairs of the house in order to use the restroom. So that was my fun plumbing hell. But wait, there's more. Last night, I don't know what my mom did, but she somehow rolled herself out of bed, bashed her head off of the nightstand cart she has next to her bed, and not only gave herself a concussion, she injured her wrist somehow and has a nasty gash on her nose and a bit of a black eye. So we had to basically we had to have an ambulance come get her last night because dad dad had a bit to drink. So because he wasn't expecting to go anywhere after work. So she didn't spend the night at the hospital. She was there for a few hours. Luckily nothing long term injury wise. So she stayed home from work today, but hopefully she can go back tomorrow. Then today, because her being in the hospital for so long and they had to take a week off last week, her paycheck was $900 short. So we had to help them foot that. And just before going live, I came into my room to cut the reviews for over the weekend, and I found my mouse on the floor. I'm guessing Soul decided he wanted to play with it and threw it off my desk onto the mouse wheel. So my mouse wheel's busted. My right click is not working 100%. So I have a new one on order, and hopefully it can make it here before next week, or at least early next week. So yeah, my week's been going swimmingly. And by swimmingly, I mean I just want to scream into the void for the next 3 hours. Uh, as far as gameplay wise,
Do that tomorrow.
as far as gaming goes, bold of you to think I've had a chance to really game much this week. um, and then yeah, I'd like to go to a Digimon tournament this weekend, but I guess it depends how Mom's feeling if she wants to take us down to the big city or not. But yeah, I think that's everything from me. Just this week has sucked.
Yeah.
Golix.
Hopefully that's
Adam,
it.
we're losing you.
Yeah, you're fading in and out again.
Anyway, not too much happened around here. Technically, my mom got back from doing down some business in Massachusetts and then going to help out my sister for a few days. Thankfully, things went mostly smoothly. I saw a dentist about a tooth that was sensitive. And apparently it wasn't a tooth; it was a little bit of bone poking in through or growing in through the
Ooh.
thing in my mouth. So they shaved that down, and I'm on somewhat soft diet because of to
Yeah.
let it heal up properly. Because although it's right up against my tongue, so it's really hard to not brush against it with my tongue. But it does feel a lot better, so that's good. It was already mostly feeling better. But it would have been coming and going. Because I guess what happens when that happens is that because it's exposed, the 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 bone dies and then just gets worn down naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But that like takes a while, so better to do it quickly. I hope it wasn't expensive because I still have a hospital bill I need to pay from the stitches in my lip, but they didn't think it had anything to do with that, like from falling on my jaw or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
did
they
also
they
tell
would
them
have
about that.
known, like if you
Well, I told them.
broke your jaw, like where it would be sticking bone out.
Yeah, no, it wasn't not that it would have been broken, but that it would have like started growing in a weird direction
Mm-hmm.
because of that or something, which sounds dumb now that I say it. So, um, but yeah, not too much else going on. Video game wise, Super Robot Wars Y announced its third DLC pack this on the 20th. They were supposed to have a live stream about it, but there was a major earthquake off the coast of Japan that day, so there was too much tsunami watch for them to do that. But then they posted a pre-recorded reveals video later that evening. Um, and then it released like the next day, basically. So I've been playing that. The new series are Space Runaway Ideon, the third movie of Eureka 7 High Evolution, which is a weird movie series that started as kind of a series prequel recap,
Yeah.
but then
All
went into some other
universe
things, which...
weirdness. Yeah.
Yeah, the Eureka 7 writers accidentally gave the original series a happy ending, and they've been working on fixing that ever since,
Yeah.
is what it feels like. Um,
Not mecha if it has a happy ending, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of mechas that have a happy ending, and like I said, the original Eureka 7 was a very satisfying ending, and then everything since takes place in either an alternate timeline or a possible future timeline where one or both of the main characters is dead and the other one is depressed. Um, so that Star Driver the movie, which looks interesting. Idol Masters Xenoglossia, which is what if the people from Idolmaster were mech pilots instead, I guess. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
Um, the unit is really good though. And Char's counterattack Belter Chica's children for free because we have Char and Amuro here, and only Amuro was in 30, which is the game that came before this, and he got the high nuke. So this time they have to give Char the Nightingale, and also give Amuro the high nuke because people would totally bitch if they didn't.
Yeah.
Is that all 6? Or did I leave one out? Oh, Cross Ange. And these are all just one character dealies. Eureka has an upgrade. And Char and Amuro just get new units. It's not like a new character. But all the other ones are just one thing, which I feel like 30 did a better job of, and even the previous DLC packs on this one did a better job of not putting in characters from a series that's team based, but you only get one of them. The closest thing was like Sakura Wars in 30th, which Sakura Wars has quite large teams because it's a strategy game too.
Right.
They still give you like a set of 3 and a set of 2 of those. Whereas in this one, Crossange and Xenoglossia are both team-based series, and I think Star Driver kind of is too, but this is a post-series thing, so... Anyway, most of them is one are just warped in from another universe, so it's not like they don't give an excuse for it, but it does make the inclusion feel a little incomplete. but the units are neat, and I'm not complaining. So that's what I've been playing pretty much for the last couple of days. I think that's about all I got.
Okay. I guess it's my go. Let's see. Nothing major's happened yet this week. The big thing is Friday. My brother's mediation with his ex is occurring sometime that day. And it's like, hopefully they can get all their issues worked out, but I don't think anyone's particularly optimistic that's going to happen.
Mm.
Especially for some of the maneuvers he's pushing for that are, well, quite frankly, just not going to happen in his present contention, let's say. Like he's pushing for a return to 50-50, like, or maybe full custody, I forget. Like, there's some adjustment, but I'm not sure if his present work schedule is going to allow for that. I suppose that's one of the things they have to determine at arbitration. Like, aside from that, my mother is going to be out of town for the weekend. It's a weird joint birthday celebration thing she's got going on with one of her friends.
Mm.
I know. Because apparently it's going to be that friend's birthday, and she wants, she wants to head down, and because my mother's birthday was just a few weeks ago, it's just kind of let's celebrate it together kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's see, Discord. At least the Discord app on my computer continues to have pinging issues. Still haven't nailed those down, other than like it'll just ping out of nowhere, and sometimes it doesn't even register the ping. It just cuts out. So I don't know what's going on there. But in terms of the video game playing, let's see. I just completed a game called Unsighted. I guess the best way to describe that is, what if The Legend of Zelda were populated by robots that are on timers that can thankfully be disabled because fuck that design decision. Like, that's the kind of thing that should have been turned on for a New Game Plus playthrough, not the default. Sorry. I get that what their intention was. Still utterly hated it.
Mm-hmm.
What do the timers do?
Literally turns everybody in the game into what they call the unsighted. Berserk robot.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is an option to turn that off. But they're all like, no, the intention was we leave the timers on because it's connected to something called meteor dust, and you have to make the choice to who lives and who dies, and what rewards can they give you if you give them enough moon. And you have your own timer. That's less of a concern because you can get through the main game in enough time. It's just more if you're doing the exploratory thing, especially if you're going for the true ending. That can be time consuming. Like,
Oh wait, so this is like
Anyway.
a global timer that's just always ticking down?
yes.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a choice.
Yes, it is. One I vehemently disagree with. Like, but um regardless, completed that a couple of days ago. Went through a couple of other games. Still haven't settled on what to play next. No. Thought it was going to be Rayman Legends, but it did the thing of let's control a 2D game with an analog stick, and I hate that on principle. Like,
Mhm.
it's a good game. It's just I don't really like controlling 2D, especially platformers, with a analog stick. Like, I get that may be more of a me problem, but whatever. Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for the news. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Cody Skillen of Electric Monk Limited.
Hello.
Greetings. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's been quite hot recently, so I'm nestled between two computers, just baking right now.
I'm like, yeah, that'd do it. Um, especially I'm going like, are they your development computers?
One's my personal computer, and then one is my work computer. So, but well, my personal computer, um, generally it just runs. Like the fans don't kick on so much, and I think it just doesn't generate as much heat. But the work computer is like a bit older, and whenever it starts like doing something, like if I'm running a build or whatever, it starts to heat up.
The rocks are thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. And if I recall correctly, you're in Winnipeg, right?
Yep. So we recently went from like minus 20 Celsius to like, I don't know, it's like plus 20, plus 18 Celsius right now, but in here it's probably like closer to 30 Celsius just because of like the ambient heat from the machines.
Mm.
Right. And I'm guessing there's not much in the way of ventilation either.
Um, I haven't plugged in the AC yet just because it's supposed to snow or like it's supposed to get cold again on Friday. So it's kind of like, okay, I like set up the AC, right? And then it gets real cold and then it's like, oh, okay, cool. Turn the heater back on for a couple days and then it goes back up to like plus 20 2 days after that. So I'm just gonna ride it out for now.
Mhm.
Well, good luck to you, because that's kind of weather people get sick in.
Yeah, well, recently there has been something going around, but fortunately I haven't I felt a little off this weekend, but I took some zinc tablets and seemed to be doing fine.
Well, that's good. Anyway, so putting aside the small talk about the weather, let us formally begin the interview by asking, well, our usual beginning question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Um I actually don't remember a time where I wasn't interested in video games. So like as a kid, I think I was probably about 3 and my grandparents had a like NES, and I went over there. It must have been for like it was like Christmas or something, right? So I went over to my grandparents' place, and um, my grandpa was like, "Oh, check this out!" And I think it was like Donkey Kong and like Ice Climbers and like the original like Nintendo pack-in games like Duck Hunt and Mario, and I played that, and I mean, I've haven't stopped playing video games since then. So
Well, it's a common story that we hear on the program through various time spans. People got interested when they were kids, and that interest kept up all the way till, well, the present moment. That being said, what got you in the door professionally?
so I started when I was in high school actually. I my what was it? My math teacher. I had a free class in the morning, and my math teacher's like, "Oh, you don't have any classes?" He's like, "Oh, you should show up and you should take computer science, right? Or like programming or whatever it was called." And I was like, "Okay." And so it was like actually like the wrong slot. Like I was in like grade 11 at the time, and it was the grade 12 slot, and he's like, "Yeah, just the course material is like on a website and you can just work through it, whatever." And um I started it like probably like a week and a half late, and I burned through the course material. Like I finished all the material in the course, and it was like I still had like a month and a half of left in that semester. And I just after that point, I just kind of kept programming because I like it and I'm somewhat competent at it at least. And then in university, I was going to school for computer science, and I had a couple ideas for like games that I wanted to work on, and I just worked on that stuff, kind of like outside of like whenever I had free time, and sometimes when I didn't have free time. But so I just kept working on that, and I ended up having to work some menial jobs, right? I did moving for quite a long time, and I was a delivery driver for a while, but I went to my there's a guy that I know called Greg Kamichuk, and he's a comic book artist. And so I went to one of his art shows, and when I was there, he's like, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy." I was like, "Okay." And he introduced me to Mike Sanders, and who is my current boss. And we basically were just talking about like game development, and we talked a lot about XCOM actually, because we both played a lot of XCOM. And I don't know, maybe like 3 weeks later, something like that, the truck that I was driving actually broke down, and I got a message from him asking me to like put in an application as a Unity dev. So it seemed like a sign, and I put in my application, and then it took about a month. But I started working at Electric Monk, and initially I wasn't doing game design projects or game development projects at all. I was actually working on like industrial projects, so like scanning industrial sites and like with like lidar scanners, and then stitching that stuff together. And then I worked on a bunch of other stuff, like some contract work for like different apps, and I built a database thing for tracking like TV shows. So I ended up doing all this kind of stuff, and eventually, it was during COVID that and during this time there was like different projects where it's like, oh, like let's just try to get like a proof of concept for like whatever various different game ideas, right? And nothing kind of stuck. But during COVID, one of the guys that used to work there, who left to work at I think it's Ubisoft, but he had done a game jam game, and my boss liked the concept of it, so they bought that from him, and I think it was called Coffee Gets You There. It's kind of like a co-op game, so like it's hard to control, and like you stumble around a lot. And what happened was they're like, "Hey, can you figure out how to like turn this into a full game? Like, how would we do that?" So I kind of inherited this project, and then more or less had to kind of rework it from the ground up in order to like turn it into something that could really expand into a full game. So that's how I got my start in the industry.
Okay. Kind of a, how do I put this? Baptism in fire situation. Honestly,
Pretty
given
much, yeah.
um, and so this game project you inherited, is this what eventually became or turned into Strange Brew?
Yeah, we had to. It's kind of ship of Theseus, right? So we ended up having to replace almost everything in the entire game in order to like actually turn it into a thing. And also, it's like when I got this, it was very much like my boss had a vision for it, where he's like, "Yeah, I want kind of like a cinematic, kind of like zombie game where like you get chased around by like zombies, but you're a coffee addict in the zombie apocalypse, and you're like hopelessly addicted to coffee. Like, what kind of like, like, basically, he's like, so can you come up with like game mechanics for that? And I was like, sure. And so I spent a lot of time kind of like looking at well, I looked specifically at a game called Days Gone, and in specific, there's like a lumber mill area in that game, and I was watching someone play it, and there's a lot of traps in that area where you'll like drop logs on zombies, and you kind of like run through, and like you're constantly like managing this horde that's like running after you, and even if you turn around and like shoot them, there's just so many that kind of it's not really an effective way of dealing with them. I was kind of like, okay, well, like, what if we just removed the weapons and then kept the other parts of that? Um, that was basically my pitch, and I was like, it should play a lot more like a zombie movie than like a stereotypical zombie game where you just kind of stand there and like hose down like endless amounts of enemies.
And I'm guessing that idea was met with approval.
Well, yeah, that's what ultimately ended up becoming the game. There's also like some inspiration from can't remember which one, but the Tomb Raider game where you're getting chased around, or you get chased through this like underground area by I think they're called pygmies. And there's like a lot of segments where you have to like run over like collapsing bridges and like collapsing wooden platforms and like jump over pitfall traps and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's like kind of cool. So it was really just kind of like synthesizing that together, and then our team is about, well, like when everyone was working on the game, it was about 5 people. So there would be like people who'd bring like different ideas and stuff. So it just kind of ended up building off of like that core concept and then adding in different elements to it. And we added in like coffees with like different power ups, and honestly, like a lot of the difficulty in working on this game was really the level design aspect, because it's you have to make sure that you're presenting like new types of challenges and like new things. Otherwise you're just essentially like running away from a horde of zombies, which if you don't have an interesting area to run away from or through, then the game is like very simplistic, I guess.
Like, that's perhaps not the concern. I would imagine repetition would be. Like, if you had 5 levels of the same area doing the same thing, that would probably turn off a lot of players.
Yeah. So like the other thing too is like a lot of we have a lot of kind of set piece or like environmental things that go on, because you can't directly kill the zombies. You have to use like environmental traps and stuff. So that means instead of the variety being added through like different weapons and stuff, it has to be done through the level design itself. And the way that my boss kind of like imagined it, or the way that like initially when we were talking about it, what he said was like, "Oh, it's kind of like different racing courses," and I was like, "Yeah, exactly." So a lot of it is about managing the resources that you have access to, and also like the level itself. Instead of having an inventory where you can store up like all of the stuff that you find, having a more limited inventory, so you can only hold up to 3 of the coffee beans, which work as distractions for the zombies, and you can hold 1 coffee, which like either it will refill all of your stamina, but it will also some of them will give you power ups. So one of them turns you invisible, one gives you like a speed boost and a jump increase, and then one allows you to just kind of like tackle through zombies. So like the combination of that plus the environment that you're going through plus the amount of zombies and the types of zombies that are in there really is what we have to work with in order to create the dynamics of the game.
And you think you accomplished that?
I think we did about as good a job of using, because we're working like it's a pretty constrained like tool set, I guess. So whereas like in other games you might have like a whole variety of weapons, or you might have a whole variety like and a whole variety of like enemy types, and then the player can like get new abilities and stuff as the game goes on in order to unlock that. We really had to kind of do that through the environment, and I think we kind of explored all of the most interesting ideas, at least that we could come up with for how to like create interesting levels, or like interesting situations for the player to experience.
Hmm. Well, that actually brings a question to mind. And have you ever considered releasing the dev tools? So like players could make their own level.
Um, the dev tools are really just the Unity engine. I think that would be cool if it were possible, but I think we'd have to that would almost be like an entirely new project in order to set it up so that players could like modify and build it, because we'd have to create a tool set so that you could build out levels within the game itself.
Something a little more
Uh,
user friendly than just throwing them at Unity.
Yeah.
yeah, Unity. Well, I've been to get a build to like properly work in Unity, especially with like all the various like plugins that we have, and it's like it's quite a challenge. Especially
Mm.
where like we're managing like different licenses and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, well, oh, you forgot to sign in to the sound engine, logged you out, and you didn't sign in, so actually the sound banks didn't generate, so actually in this build there's actually no sound, so you have to go back, and then it's like struggling to figure out like, okay, why aren't the sound banks actually being generated properly? And then it's like, oh, well, you're logged out but we didn't tell you, but also you didn't copy the soundbank.dll, like the binary file that runs fine in the editor. You didn't copy that into the correct package in the build, and it's enough of a challenge for someone who's like been working on this thing for like the last 5 years to create a successful build. So as it currently stands, like it's just I think that would be cool. It's just I don't. We would have to like completely. We would have to make the game with that as an intention from the very beginning, and especially because this is like the first fully developed game that we worked on. It was like that. It would have just been an overwhelming amount of work to actually do that.
Mm. Understandable given the circumstances, though maybe that's a sequel idea. Strange Brewmaker, you could call it.
That's not a bad idea. Like, I think that would actually be pretty interesting. I think, yeah, something like that. It's it's kind of like, I guess, how like Mario Maker is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so it's the same kind of a thing. It's like, okay, like they made however many like Mario games, right? And then eventually, like way after the fact, they're like, okay, well, we'll make Mario Maker, and then now you can make your own like Mario levels, but they design like an entire toolkit around that. So, and it's like I think that would be the way to that would be a potential path forward to like expand outwards on the idea. The other one that we had was to make levels that instead of being kind of like a linear level structure where it's just you complete the level and then you go to the next level, would be to make one where it's more of like a high score thing. So like you're trying to basically survive as long as possible and get as high a score as possible within the level, and like you can like run through and like the level would like be looping back on itself. So it's like you'd activate one trap in one area, and in order to reset it, you'd have to go to another part of the level and like pull a switch or do something to like reset that trap, and you know.
Okay, so there is the potential for a sequel in a couple of different directions, should the desire arise for.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. That being said, I don't know how well you can answer this question, but it's worth putting out there regardless. Do you feel like, or do you think that you executed the vision that your boss had in the finished build of Strange Brew here?
I think so. Like he really likes the way that it looks. He's a filmmaker by trade, so
Mhm.
his focus is always like very much on like the aesthetics of it, and like we put in a ton of nods to like zombie movies, like specifically like the Romero movies, but like he's huge into that. Um I mean, I like horror movies and I like zombie films, but I would say that he's definitely much more of like a film buff than me. I mean, I'm much more of like uh, uh, he's so he's a filmmaker and he's immersed in that world, and I tend to like, because I make video games, I tend to be much more immersed into like playing video games, and like I pay a lot more attention to like what's going on with trends in video games, or not trends but just interesting design ideas in video games.
I
So
mean, I mean, there is a long, long history of trying to marry the world of movies with video games,
oh yeah.
but that I think is outside the scope of what we're talking about here. Um, you know, but um, do you feel that this game is appropriately cinematic?
um I th- if anything, it's more cinematic than it. So if I were to like have free reign, I would have made it less cinematic, to be honest. Um, like the camera angles and stuff
Hmm.
were very much like a thing that my boss wanted, because it's like, oh well, you have to be able to see like the zombies like chasing behind you, and like we have to show like all these angles and stuff. So he's like always he has like a very cinematic like perspective, like he's thinking of the game in terms of like a cinematographer, like how is the shot framed and how are the camera transitions and stuff. And to an extent, I think that is one of the things that was like the most difficult to actually like execute, because instead of just allowing the player to directly control the camera and stuff, we have to like deal with like the player running from all different kinds of angles and dealing with a lot of camera transitions. And I think in terms of experience, I think that that's probably one of the largest drawbacks of how we executed it. But this is like the, I guess, trade-off of when you're working for somebody, like you have like the stuff that's in your purview to like execute on, like the stuff that is under your charge and that you're responsible for. And then you have like the other like the things that other people like want you to make basically. And so you have to kind of be able to like figure out an appropriate compromise between those two things where it's like like the levels like the way that the game looks is really cool, but the trade-off to that is if we have a ton of assets all over the place and like tons and tons of shaders and volumetric effects and stuff, what ends up happening is it's harder to optimize that, right? And it adds in like extra complexity. So for me, it was like a very like that was another part that was like quite challenging, was to get the balance between hitting those like cinematic elements with like the gameplay to like try to realize the vision while still making a game that is like interesting to play, because it's very easy to go too far in either direction. Well, it, if you go so far into the form of cinematic, you can have a beautiful looking game, and I think we've all seen games that are like, you see renders of it or you like see a video of it and it looks like absolutely amazing, and then you play it and you're like, oh, it looks cool, but there's not much to the gameplay. So it's like trying to figure out how to like make it look the way that it's supposed to look.
Early
And then
PS4 had a
also,
lot of that issue.
yeah, yeah, like there are so many of those games where you see a screenshot and you're like, wow, this looks amazing, and it's like you're super excited, and then it's just like, oh, okay, I see. There's not a lot of game here. And like my personal well, the types of games that I like to play are much more along the lines of like roguelikes. So very like Infra Arcana or Brogue are two of like the games that I play a lot of, right? And I would say like Brogue is a beautiful game, but it has very simplistic tile-based graphics. I mean, they're not technically ASCII, I don't think, or there's a lot of rendering tricks that like you couldn't do with standard ASCII graphics. But to an extent, like my perspective on this type of thing is that when you have more simplified graphics, sometimes like if your game is engaging, it allows the player to fill more in with their imagination. And when you go for more of a representative style, there's a lot of space for people to fill in. And while we were working on the game, generally speaking, not just with the visuals, but like with the kind of story beats and like the event sequences that happen, I was like, I don't think we should over explain things. I think we should just let the things happen and let people recognize them rather than try to like spoon feed them the narrative of like what this game is, because ultimately it's a zombie movie plot. You're chased by like the zombie apocalypse happens, it's related to the coffee, and then as you go through the level, it's kind of like there's a sequence where it's like, okay, you get to like the HQ of the company, and then at the end of that you go down this elevator and then you're in an underground lair, and you see some stuff in there. And so it's like, instead of just explaining this through like dialogue between scenes or like having cutscenes and stuff, we just tried to like convey that through the game itself.
Okay. That does make sense for what you're going for here, because this is a escape platformer game.
Yeah,
So
it's much more arcadey and like like
yeah.
it's not like a JRPG where it's you have this like deep and complex plot that you like forget who half the characters are, but and then until they show up again.
Or even like a AAA action adventure game, as they call them.
Yeah.
Like the aforementioned Days Gone comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, anyway, so another question that we had is the file size, because we actually reviewed this game a few days ago, and we noted that it's on Steam, a pretty sizable 47 gig. Like, and we were trying to figure out why, because there was like nothing on the surface, so to speak, that screamed a big file size.
The reason for that, as best as I can tell, it's primarily because of the amount of like assets in there, like the amount of like unique geometry, just like the sheer amount of like actual like 3D assets that are in there is like it's kind of mind-boggling. Like I don't deal with any of that. Like it, I'm primarily familiar with like the actual code, and the code that I wrote, like I've worked on aside from like packages and stuff that I had, like third-party stuff that you bring in, like like input controls and stuff like that. Like just I was looking at the profiling and stuff. The code is not that massive, and also it tends to like execute like just the raw code will tend to execute in like, I don't know, it's like under 10 milliseconds. It's quite quick, right? But just the sheer volume of like physics interactions that are going on, because the way that it was originally made, like as I kind of inherited it, was using a what's it called, like Puppet Master, which is a ragdoll simulation thing. So it's like it has a lot of that in there, and I stripped out as much as I possibly could. But some of it was just, it's like so baked in there that like I wasn't able to like pull it out. But yeah, a large part of that is just due to the sheer quantity of like assets in there. And
Okay.
like the way that our team works too is like I'm basically the only programmer, and then we had two full-time like what's it called, like technical artists, like 3D sculptors, and like people who are like working on the art assets, and a sound designer, and for a while we had like an animator. And so a lot of that comes from just like packing in so many of those assets, and some of them you like see only like once or twice too, right? So but it's that, but also like the Unity engine has a certain amount of like heaviness to it, where it's just like it adds in extra cruft. Like I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, the vast majority of like what is contained in the game itself is actually just the assets.
Okay. And the game's been out for about a month, I think. How well
I
is it
think so.
doing so far?
I actually don't know the sales numbers specifically. That my boss has that information, but
Okay. And as I understand it, this game is being ported to the PlayStation right now.
that's what I'm working on. So it's
Oh, the port's being done in-house?
yeah.
All right. Well, because a lot of indie devs will typically ship it off to a port house, or their publisher will handle that.
We're self-published, so
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically just been me, and I've been working through the process of like getting it to run on the PlayStation 5. It's
Are you
building for the
aiming?
PlayStation 5 is quite a experience. I'll put it that way.
Are you aiming PS5 only, or will there be a PS4 version as well?
We're only doing PS5 because it's to do PS4. It's like it's a separate process
Right.
basically, and you also have to pay for like dev kits and licensing and all this stuff on top of it. So it's
Right.
like, and right now it's essentially just me like working on doing this port, and like I'm hoping to wrap it up like shortly, and then be able to kind of move on to work on to some other projects. But it's yeah, to do a port in-house, considering like in-house means like it's just me doing it, it's
Right.
quite an undertaking.
I guess the only saving grace is it's Unity. Could you imagine doing this, pre-Unity era?
Oh yeah, it would be an utter nightmare. I don't know, like it's it's kind of interesting because it's like, well, I guess there's like Unreal and there's Unity and there's Godot kind of.
hmm
Like Godot is like coming along, but then they had some bad press, but also like I don't know. Godot is I'm not fully up to speed on like what exactly is going on with that, but outside of that, I'm kind of like I've kind of become a little bit more interested in like working on things like outside of an engine, just because when you're working always within an engine, you have to deal with like the constraints of that engine. And
Right.
like I've like when I was first working on like my personal projects and stuff, it was just in like Visual Studio. It was just like build it like straight as a Windows application. It didn't have
Right.
anything special in it. And for like smaller projects where you don't need like multiplayer support and like all this other kind of stuff, it's relatively straightforward. But the other thing too is getting Steam integration. Like if you're going to write a project outside of an engine, then you'd have to like actually kind of like go through and like implement all of like the Steam stuff directly yourself,
hmm
because you're not nobody's releasing packages for essentially the engine that only you are working on.
Right.
So it's an insane amount of work to do that, but
For
I
anyone who plays a lot of older games on Steam, if you're wondering why they don't have achievements, that's why.
yeah, that's a huge factor.
Yeah,
um
it's a tool set called Steamworks.
hmm
yep,
Um, so,
good old
um,
Steamworks SDK.
Yep.
yep. Anyway, so when do you hope to have the PlayStation 5 version of Strange Brew out?
um as soon as possible. Look, I personally wish that I knew the answer to that.
No, that's valid.
Honestly, like the sooner it's done, the happier I'll be. It's kind of a it's been quite stressful, and it's like I like the sooner that I get it done, like the better it is for everybody. So
Mm.
that's kind of I've been working at it like every day for like the past like month, so it's been like I have not done much else outside of this. Well, like other than stuff that like is hard baked into my schedule. Like I teach fencing and
hmm
like stuff like that. So,
Mm,
but
okay. And I guess I'll wrap things up by asking if you've got any ideas for your next project yet.
so I'm working on a personal project actually. It's a somewhere between a roguelike and a like SRPG. I call it Fishermancer. You play as a fishman necromancer, and you're tasked by the fishman god Gloglaroth to retake the surface world and reestablish the fishman kingdom. Uh, so that's what I am hoping to be able to work on in the near future, much more than I currently am.
Hmm. Well, hopefully that will occur in the near future.
Yeah.
And yeah, good luck to you on wrapping up the PlayStation version of Strange Brew.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, so I'm going to see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good. Gullix? I think he might be
Is he
muted.
still there?
I, mm, maybe. I'm not.
MIA.
No,
Anyway,
yeah. Anyway, so I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today, Cody. It's been a very interesting conversation, enlightening even.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And not a problem. Right. So the game is Strange Brew. It is currently out now on Steam, and it is coming soon, TM, to the PlayStation 5. That's a favorite saying of some of our developer friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Anyway, it is currently on sale for $14.99, though at time of broadcast, it is currently 25% off, going for $11.24. So be sure to pick it up today. Right, so Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, so welcome to the topic of discussion. I'm like, so we were originally going to talk about ActRaiser here, but then news happened. I'm like, Petty, you would probably be particularly interested in this Game Pass.
Yep. They relented
so-
hard.
They kind of, by their own admission, they had to. Like the official.
What? If we make it completely suck, people will stop subscribing?
Well, it was fine. The issue is they almost doubled the price.
Right. And like according to the PR that came out yesterday, they by their own admission they said Game Pass had gotten too expensive.
Right.
Which is something you personally have mentioned, Petty.
I mentioned on air several times is the reason why I left Game Pass is because it got way too expensive. My comfort spot, like the maximum to go, is like $25 a month,
Right.
and they were wanting 30.
Yes. So Microsoft has announced a couple of changes here. So let's go over them. The top tier Ultimate Game Service is dropping down to $22.99 per month. And the PC Gaming Pass is now going to go for $13.99. So that is
Am I
a price.
understanding correctly that the trade-off here is that they removed Call of Duty from the day one thing?
Effectively, yes.
Not effectively. That is happening. Call of Duty is no longer day one.
Schadenfreude.
Well,
I'm like,
you say that, but there are people who their only game purchase every year is Call of Duty.
No, I think that it's financially probably a pretty good way of getting people to spend money on top of Game Pass.
Yeah.
I just
Because keep in mind,
love the taste of the tears of Call of Duty Bros.
well, keep in mind, you still need to have Game Pass because it effectively replaced Xbox Live Gold. So you still need to be paying for the service to be able to play online if you're on console.
Yeah. Right, but I think there's more going on here than just the Game Pass got too expensive. Let's drop something from the package to make it less expensive.
I mean, they could have dropped Fortnite, and that would have made no one mad.
Fortnite is already free, isn't it?
They have a thing called Fortnite Crew, which is basically you get free access to the Battle Pass.
Yeah.
And then there's some
Um,
other special things in there, but the big thing is you get free access to the paid battle passes.
Well, Fortnite wasn't the only thing that third party that they could have dropped. EA and Ubisoft probably could have stood to have been excised from the package as well. But Call of Duty it has a specific purpose. Okay, because Microsoft learned the hard way about what happens when you put your big franchises on your, let's be frank here, your fucking rental service day one.
The answer is
It's
low turnover into players to purchasers.
not only that, but Call of Duty utterly fucking collapsed last year.
Yeah.
That's the big reason. Like Microsoft is saying, it's because Game Pass got too expensive, and that is true. But let us be clear. Call of Duty sold far below what it usually sells. And not only that, it got herb stomped by both Arc Raiders and Battlefield 6. We have the actual metrics. It's actually pretty significant.
Right.
And this is happening. Like I think this was like the first full year of Call of Duty under Microsoft's stewardship, and this is the end result. Now, it's definitely been argued that this is the kind of hammer punch from Black Ops 6 going into Black Ops 7. And that is probably true to a certain extent also. But it cannot be ignored that you basically gave away all of the fucking Call of Duty revenue to Game Pass. And you didn't, and it didn't translate, as Petty said. It's like there was not a new influx of millions upon millions of new Xbox Game Pass users.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that that was probably one of the worst Call of Duty games.
Yes, I acknowledge that, but it's also a combination. It's a combination of factors here.
Right.
It's Call of Duty 7 sucking. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 sucking. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 sucking, and it's also the fact that people who would ordinarily spend $70 on a game, would only spend $30 on their Game Pass service.
Well, remember, it's not just 70 on the game. They're also, if they're on consoles, they also have to pay for access to the internet.
I'm just saying the base base price here, because let's be honest, Call of Duty is fucking microtransaction filled up to the hilt.
Well, and that's why one of the major reasons people would do it on Game Pass is because Game Pass includes gold, so that saved them even more.
Yeah. So the end result was Microsoft basically torched Activision's biggest franchise, really the only thing they fucking make these days.
Yeah, unless you want to count fucking Candy Crush.
That's King.
I know it's King, but King is owned by them.
That's owned by Activision Blizzard.
Fair.
Like, no, I'm not including the Blizzard shit here.
Oh yeah, because literally all Blizzard is Overwatch and WoW.
No, that's not true. Like Diablo 4 and Diablo 2 are actually doing really well. Like the last Diablo 4 expansion apparently did really solid business for them. But we're not talking about those. We're talking about Call of Duty. So basically they torched the economic pool of Call of Duty, tried to sacrifice it at the Xbox Game Pass altar, and it failed.
Spectacularly.
Yeah, so they're basically calling a mulligan on that.
Mm.
And the word is things may not be done in that direction either. Like, it's what happens when a new regime comes in. They will do things differently from the old regime. And the grapevine is replete with ruminations of further transformations to Game Pass. Apparently, the end goal here is they are looking to increase flexibility, which lines up with one of the things I've been hearing about further Game Pass plans. And that is getting rid of all the third-party stuff. Or at least maybe having just a tier of Xbox games.
Yeah.
First-party material, basically.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if they keep it, like, give you an option to pay a little less than what you would just getting the separate subscriptions themselves. But that's just a personal me thing.
But the bigger conversation that I've been hearing that's been surging through the rumor mill is the revival of exclusive. Like
exclusive to Game Pass?
That's actually a bit unclear. I've just heard the word exclusives being mentioned in this direction. Like, yeah, I do not know if that means exclusive to Xbox, exclusive to Game Pass, exclusive to the Xbox Game Pass ecosystem, let's call it.
Yeah.
I.e., let's stop bringing games to the PlayStation 5, the Switch 2.
Are they going to make things exclusive to just the Xbox console and leave PC players in the lurch again?
Don't know. That's why the exclusive thing is a lot more wobbly.
Because let's be frank, Xbox console sales have not been doing well for the past 2 generations.
No, there are other hurdles now. There's the fact that the Microsoft CEO, the big boss himself, does not like the idea of exclusive. He has gone on record saying, if I could end exclusives, I would.
Yeah, and that feeds into the reason why would I want to buy an Xbox, you know?
Yeah. It's more to the point. Microsoft has actually, and ironically, been finding incredible success on PlayStation. Like, Forza Horizon 5 has done really well on PlayStation. Sea of Thieves has done very well. The word is better than Xbox because, Rare is a European developer. And, Europe and Xbox have not been getting along sales-wise.
Europe and Xbox, Japan and Xbox.
Basically anywhere that's not America.
Basically.
And even here, they're getting curb stomped by PlayStation.
Hell, by the Switch.
Yes. But I'm talking about their quote-unquote direct competition, depending on the venue. But the point is, Microsoft is actually making a lot of money on the PlayStation ports and even some of the Switch ports, like Minecraft. So it now becomes a question, do they try to put the genie back in the bottle, the toothpaste back into the tube? etc., etc. Like Sony's actually trying to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Though probably has a better go at it than Microsoft. Because, in case you didn't hear this bit of news, Sony is apparently ending the practice of bringing their internally developed first-party single-player experiences to Steam for a variety of reasons. They're just doing second-party stuff and multiplayer-focused games, like Fair Games is still planned, and Marvel Tokon, except that kind of thing. But apparently, Ghosts of Yotoi is no longer coming to Steam, due to the perception that they are doing like Microsoft in they're kind of burning their own sales on this ecosystem that's now proving to be not worth it. Though, once again, there are a lot of reasons why PC gamers have stopped buying Sony's product. I'm like, it's not just the lateness. That has been a complaint. But the initial batch of PC ports actually sold really well. Especially for games that showed up a year late, 2 years late. But subsequent games got sold a lot less. That's because Sony, you half-assed it.
Yeah. Also, the whole thing of even single-player games requiring a PlayStation ID. PC gamers don't like doing that.
Well, it's not just that. They can't sell those games in any country that requires a PSN account.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of countries. Like, that's one of the big things that fucked over these ports. But another reason is because they are of very poor technical quality. Or at least they were on release. Like, The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. Infamously bad. And even, like Spider-Man 2 was pretty technically botched at the gate. It's like... And here's the thing. PC gamers are going to be the most sensitive to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That's what happens when you spend $2,000-$3,000 on your kit.
That's the
Probably
low end
even
now,
more
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, probably even more now. Like, like it was never going to be 1-to-1, but if you're going to not just half-ass the effort, Sony, you're going to half of the ass that you already were half-assing. Yeah, you're going to get some fucking poor sales. I will concede in some cases, it's just this was a poor choice to bring to the PC. Like, nobody was clamoring for a PC port of Sackboy.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's clamoring for the original version of Sackboy. Or, like, bringing Uncharted 4 to Steam and Epic Game Store.
Right.
Yeah, you brought the fourth in a franchise, and you didn't bring the other version. See also the latest Ratchet and Clank. Like, there's no history here. In places where history is important. It isn't like God of War, which was, yes, it's a sequel series, but it's also a new starting point.
In the new Ratchet and Clank, though, a semi-reboot?
No.
Oh.
That was the PlayStation 4 one.
Right,
Ripped Apart is a sequel to all of the other Ratchet and Clank games.
That's
right. There's an accessibility gap there. I mean, that's more of a franchise issue than a port issue, honestly.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe that is why Sony wanted to reboot Ratchet and Clank in the first place. It's just, that plan utterly was bollocks. By the not just the poor quality of that remake, but the poor quality of the movie.
Right.
Anyway, this is starting to get rambly, so we should probably wrap up in preparation of MSP.
Right.
With that in mind, coming up on the week ahead, we do have a Friday program this week. On Friday, April 24th, provided I don't get pulled away due to my brother's antics, let's say, because something could happen and, we need to have a family meeting about it, that kind of thing. I do not put that could very much happen on Friday, especially since I don't know if his mediation's happening in the morning or afternoon. So, putting that aside, on Friday, April 24th, we'll be having Jyware of A Magical Tale Revoke DX on the program. Obviously, that is a game, not a studio. It's just, the guy's name and studio are the same thing. So, kind of needed to put something else there. That being said, A Magical Tale Revoke DX is a new old Game Boy game. In case you have missed our previous dalliance with this genre, let's call it. That means somebody is developing a actual Game Boy game with modern day tool. In the case of Game Boy games, it's something called GB Studio.
Yeah, it's not a Game Boy inspired game. It is a game you could put on an actual Game Boy.
Yes. So, been a while since we delved into this particular field, so it'll be good to hear about it once again. So look forward to that. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews for Take 7, Soulstone Survivors, Chicken Knots, and Hive Blight. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.